Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I have a lot of interest in AI and quantum, but I got a long ways to go. So maybe we can clear up a couple of things. I'm sure we could all learn a lot here. So for AI, we know about large language models, but I understand we also have AI that uses chemistry and other physics in the periodic table. Is that true? So, Dr. Axton, what are some things that we can do with AI that the average American, who maybe isn't that optimistic about AI, what are some things that we can do with AI that they probably don't know, probably should know? These are things that people can use AI for today that most Americans don't know, but probably should know.
Well, I'm actually quite optimistic about AI, just to let you know. I think it's going to be great. I'm actually the opposite. I think a lot of other people who worry about it. I think one of the mistakes, so maybe mistakes is too strong a term, the U.S. is, a lot of our energy, a lot of our focus is on LLM developers and LLM use. Very important. You look at what the Chinese are doing, though. They're doing more of what you're talking about. AI for chemical industries, AI in logistics, AI in ports, AI in farming, AI in robotics. I mean, they're potentially going to lead in robotics. And I think when we think about AI, we have to think not just about language models and agentic AI, but about what people call physical AI, because that's a lot of it. The gentleman, Mr. Singer, I guess he was using AI. He's not using LLMs to make missiles. He's using kind of his own AI-developed software. And with manufacturing, they're not going to use LLMs. They're going to use sort of custom AI and it may be that you get a few companies that build, that's another reason I'm not worried about a few companies taking over everything. I don't think some of these companies are going to build manufacturing AI. I think you'll see specialty AI companies, including some of the things that you're talking about. So look at drug development. I mean, drug development is, it's potential really going to a new level as we speak. Just developing new compounds, new discoveries that could, make Americans' lives significantly better.
So with regard to jobs, I think that when we developed a locomotive, some people thought they were going to lose jobs, but it created new jobs. When they created the automobile, same thing, we adapted. With the airplane, we've adapted, and I'm sure we're going to adapt with this as well. But we're going to need a lot of energy and a lot of data centers. I'm a Virginia representative. We have more data centers in Virginia than any other state. And I had breakfast with a CEO of a $4 trillion company, and he said that China, CCP, has an energy arc very steep, and you need energy to build stuff and to run data centers and run AI. And he said we shot ourselves in the foot with these virtue signaling green ideas. And he said we were shutting down coal plants every day when China was opening up coal plants every day. And he said it was a big mistake because you just can't build things and power things. And so I know recently we got rid of a lot of the subsidies. I talked to the Secretary of Interior. He said today in America, John, 70% of our energy comes from fossil fuels. 30% comes from nuclear. And he paused and he said, where does that leave you with solar and wind? And I know a lot of people say all of the above. And if you like solar panels, I love you. And if you don't like solar panels, I love you, but we shouldn't subsidize it. We can't be playing around. How many of you, will you show me in a show of hands, believe that we are in a race for AI technology with China? So a few of you, all of you, okay, good. And so if we're serious, because some people say they want to win, and some people mean it. And if you mean it, this crazy policies of shooting yourself in the foot and shutting down coal plants makes no sense. Now, I'm not really into subsidies too much, but if I had to do a subsidy, it would be for nuclear, because I think nuclear is the only way that we're going to have the energy that we need. Now, I know in my district, it's very rural. Data centers get a lot of bad press, and some people are for it and some people are against it. But you addressed some of it, Dr. Atkinson, in that you said that Microsoft led the way with them paying for the energy. Is that correct? So that takes care of the energy issue. Also, I heard you talk about water, but I heard some of the data centers have more of a antifreeze type fluid that they recycle so it doesn't impact the local water table. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Closed loop systems.
So that's a good idea. And then I've heard that the data centers that you guys build today are a whole lot quieter. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
And then I think if you built them off the road where people don't see them and had a blind of trees, you might address most of the concerns. And so I just want to make sure we're doing that sort of thing. I visited a farm, and I think this would be more addressed to, who's the John Deere guy? Yeah, more to Mr. Henman. So I visited a farm in my district, and because it's very hard, because there's so many regulations on our farmers, it's so hard for them to make a profit. And this farmer, using AI and using John Deere tractors, can run a farm that would normally take 100 people with 20 people. And he had several tractors that do several fields, and I asked him about that. And I said, so these tractors do all the work for you? He said, yes. And so I tried to trip him up. I said, what happens if you lose the internet connection? He goes, they're programmed for 3 days ahead of time because of weather. So you've got 3 days to get your internet back. And so he has people in his tractor, and I asked them, I said, well, what do you do while the tractor's doing all the work? And they said, I got an iPad, and I do Netflix or watch movies, play video games. Does that sound familiar to you?
It does. The average age of a farmer in the United States is 58 years old. They're not getting any younger, and there's just not sufficient labor on the farm to do all the work.
Well, I do know that the average age is 58. I thought it was 60, but whatever it is, it's too high. And I would like to find legislation to get it lower because the population of the world is going to double by 2050. And if we're shrinking farms, over-regulating farms, we're going to have food, famine, and war. So we better figure that out. And I think AI would be a great solution. Now, quantum, raise your hand if you guys deal with quantum at all. Anybody here at the table? Quantum computing? What I would like to know is using quantum for AI, physical AI and large language model AI. How will AI and quantum work together to maybe solve medical challenges, fertilizer challenges, and jobs?
I wish I was a physicist. I think they're going to have different applications. So for example, one of the things that quantum is really, really good at is taking 400 million parameters that would take a human 450,000 years to solve, and it can do these things like that. That's a little different than what AI does. And so I think at some level you'll have complementarity. But Congressman, to your point, everybody talks about AI, but if we lose the quantum race to China, it's very, very serious. Because if for no other reason than simply quantum communications and encryption, those are big, big deals. Quantum has the ability to break encryption, as you well know, and so we have to. That was another point I was going to make. As much as I love AI and it's critical, there are a set of critical technologies that we cannot let the Chinese beat us in, and I would argue that biotech is one. I would argue aerospace. I would argue quantum and AI, and so we've got to get our game together as a country to become. We need to think about this as this is a national emergency, just like Eisenhower said that Sputnik was a national emergency.
We have to be PQC compliant, quantum encryption capable of security by 2030 because it's coming. And what it will allow you to do is create an environment where the rules of physics work inside the environment that you create. So you can test ideas in a fake world and then apply them to the real world. It's going to be a game changer. I've got two more quick questions. This is a military question, and I think we might have touched on it, but how do we ensure AI does not creep into the kill chain? Because if AI thinks that, oh, this is a bad idea, it's not moral, they may not know what the commander knows, and we can't have it stop it.
Yeah, this is at the core of the big policy debates right now, Congressman, and looking around the corner, it's hard for me to see a future in which AI is not getting closer and closer and closer to the trigger pullers. And my understanding of what happened with Operation Epic Fury, the planning teams were able to load these gigantic data sets and develop target packages in very quick amounts of time. And there's only going to be a matter of time before we start hooking these things up more and more and more. And so, training these systems to be adversarially robust and the underlying science that we understand how these things work. So it's right now, you couldn't trust a lethal autonomous weapon system that's powered by any kind of thing like the frontier models today. In fact, if an adversary were to do that, I would recommend we would use other types of SAP-STO capabilities to screw with their capabilities instead of fielding a symmetric capability ourselves. So there's a lot of work that DARPA and other researchers need to do to start figuring out this interpretability and reliability question. This is really, really, really critical. And I think it's going to be a national conversation about whether or not you want large-scale combat formations of autonomous systems. I think that seems to be the world we're going toward, and it's maybe unstoppable at this stage.
Yeah, so I will say this about AI, what I've seen, it's only as good as the information you put in it. And I've seen hallucination, and I've seen political bias. As a military guy, you would never know if I was a Democrat or Republican, but you use some of these AI platforms, and where it says something great about Biden and it can't say anything good about Trump, clearly biased. We've got to figure out a way to make it apolitical. I don't know how we do that. I don't know who wants to take this question, but if you could be a congressman for the day, what legislation would you put in? Just give me one idea that you have that would help us beat China in this war to be AI dominant. Legislator for the day, what would you do?
Sir, as I think you're from the SEAL community, I learned from your colleagues the idea that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so for me, classified test and evaluation that gives you the data that you to know whether or not you need to scale government oversight. This is like the strategic capability that we're lacking today. Because if we learn that there's not the threat there, like my colleague thinks, and then we should let it rip and move forward. But there is something there, then we need to pay attention to that, because we're already seeing the public, we're losing the fight for the hearts and minds of our public on AI. And if they turn against us, we're not going to be able to do what we need to do to be competitive in the 21st century.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Let me start with Dr. Atkinson. We'll go in order. Dr. Atkinson?
We're losing the fights for them hearts and minds because the narrative of almost all elites is that this is bad. So the average American, frankly, they get informed by that, and when they hear that drumbeat every single day, no wonder they're only 42%. I think, Congressman, one of the key things that we're going to need, most of the models have basically built on internet data, and there's only so much of that, and they've built on it. I think we're going to have a national data strategy that opens up a lot more data for the training. Now, this is a very controversial view, I acknowledge that, but I would completely modify HIPAA and turn it into an opt-out regime. I would love to have my data, all my medical data, donated into that, because it's going to lead to cures. And the only thing I need to know is don't personally identify me. And I'm 100% confident when you look at the model and when they do that, there are enough controls to do that. But I think we should just assume that, the more data we could put in there, just for example, on healthcare. Another one would be city governments. If they could aggregate all of the data they have, which is siloed, imagine how much better we could be in managing a city and county government. So I think a sort of national data strategy to think how can we open up more data and use it for the models, I think that would be an important step.
Mr. Crane?
I would focus on workforce training. We've got 400,000 open jobs in manufacturing right now. Our sector is investing $32 billion every year to train those workers and close those skills gaps. And to the extent that there are federal or state and local workforce programs, they need to be flexible, forward-leaning to meet the actual skills that we need. If you design a program today and it isn't implemented 5, 6, 8 years down the road, then
Obsolete.
the industry is going to have moved on, right? And so we need the programs that you all authorize here and at the state and local level as well to actually empower manufacturing workers today and the manufacturing workers of the future to get the skills they need. And increasingly, those are AI skills for the manufacturing shop floor.
Mr. Hinman?
I agree with the workforce readiness point. I think we have gone through technology changes as a species since we've existed. In my career, 30 years with Deere, I've seen us go from drafting boards to computer-aided design, and it required us to reskill people to be able to do a job in a different way. We use that to improve the productivity of the work. We use that to produce more designs and field more solutions to customers more quickly. I think we're in the space, again, of having to contemplate doing that just in a broader front than that one example across more disciplines. And I think the workforce readiness is a key component of being able to digest that as a country.
Congressman McGuire, I would replicate Project Genesis across the government. First, a lot of people are scared about AI. Part of that is that they don't understand the impact of it on the workforce. They don't understand. All we have from the past administration is the creation of chief AI officers. We don't have any other jobs that are part of it. So where are all the other AI jobs? They're happening in the tech companies right now. They're not being promulgated across higher education, national labs, or other small business, and we need to replicate that. That will help to disarm some of the concern about AI jobs and what the upskilling is. Speaking of upskilling, there's a lot that's happening in Genesis already in the form of public-private partnerships, but it's limited to the DOE. And why? Why isn't it part of NASA? Why isn't it part of NSF? Why isn't it part of NIH? And it should be. And I think it could do a lot to address the concerns that we're hearing about and really to export American AI dominance. Thank you.
I would definitely recognize the great potential of AI, but I would also honestly deal with the challenges, whether it's workforce, whether it's other guidelines to deal with it. We have won another really important race with China and India, and that was the first 6 decades of the 1800s. The majority of our exports, cotton, basically great, made us a prosperous place. But there were some costs to that in terms of winning that race with regard to slavery, with regard to dispossession of tribal lands in terms of Mississippi and Alabama and other places. And so I think we could have still won that race in terms of China without those negative externalities and pushing those on folks. So honestly dealing with those costs, not pushing them on to particular folks, but also embracing the benefits of the future. I think we can do both.
We're making a lot of progress. I yield back.